Hey friends, due to popular demand I've decided to make a build video on my Amara, who I affectionately nicknamed the Accuser. If you don't know the Accuser, well, she's a lovely lady who's been frequently spotted in stores like Walmart screaming and berating others.
I'm just trying to help you.
I'm sorry, but I don't need your help.
Yes, you do, motherfucker. You do need my help, sir. Can't you see that, you son of a bitch?
This build identifies with the Accuser because it has very little defense. Instead, it focuses on a heavy offensive barrage to take down her enemies.
You should have picked up my trash, big boy.
In this gameplay, I tried to keep the gear required to a minimum. This is all gear that can easily be obtained by farming Slaughtershaft or just farming world drops. You'll see that I never throw grenades, I'm only using them for the anointment, so the grenade that you're using doesn't actually matter. The same applies with the shield, but I do prefer using the transformer for extra survivability. I recommend looking for a cryo/radiation combo of action skill end grenades and shields, as this combo will do the most damage to the widest variety of enemies without having to change elements. I also used only a corrosive hyperfocus with a 75% radiation buff anointment the entire video. Another gun that's commonly found in Slaughtershaft. This build should be easily obtainable. If you're not familiar with Amara's ability to proc an action skill end, here's a quick demonstration of what you'll be noticing in the gameplay. As you can see, if I use Ties That Bind without actually grabbing an enemy, the cooldown resets and I'm able to spam it over and over. This will increase our rush stacks, which is also increasing our action skill damage and our status effect chance because of do harm and then the 1 point in violent tapestry. This also counts as an action skill end, so any anointment that has action skill end is now active, and I'm getting those buffs from my shield, grenade, and weapon anointments. You'll notice me doing this false grab throughout my gameplay, and you can also see times where I didn't keep the action skill end up buffs on, and my damage is significantly reduced. The first key thing with the build is that it only utilizes one skill tree cap, even with the recent level 57 increase. With this build, you're only going to need 1 point into sustainment because of how much damage you do, so any extra points into the red tree seem like a waste. Instead, I use the extra points into personal space and Samsara. Now there's a bit of a debate whether or not Samsara applies to Ties That Bind. While the skill itself doesn't do any damage, the tied enemies that are damaged by your weapon will be taking quote-unquote action skill damage, so it is still applying. Now let's take a look at the actual skill tree. As you can see, we're going to spend a majority of our points in the blue tree, a fair amount in the red tree, and the remainder will be spent in the green. The blue tree skill cap allows Amara to use her grab in between cooldowns, which essentially gives us double the action skills, and this makes doing that false grab much easier to keep up our buffs constantly. It also increases our max rush stacks and refunds half of those stacks when we kill an enemy with Ties That Bind. To get down to the blue skill cap, we'll take Do Harm, Transcend, Restless, From Rest, Laid Bare, and Wrath all maxed out, and then we'll put 2 points into Fast Hands and 1 point into Violent Tapestry. From the blue tree, we'll also grab Soul Sap, since this is the only augment available that doesn't reduce our damage. The healing is actually unnecessary, as I filmed this entire video originally without it on. Shout out to the real Micah on Twitch who suggested I use it in the first place when I wasn't actually using any augment. In the red skill tree, we'll max out Anima, Tempest, Dread, Indiscriminate, and Deep Well, and we'll put 4 points into Wildfire, 1 point into Steady Hands, and finally 1 point into Sustainment, which is going to really be keeping us alive as it'll be healing with elemental damage. Make sure to equip Ties That Bind from the red tree here as our action skill. This skill links all the enemies together and they share damage. With the remainder of our points, I like to go 3 out of 3 into personal space, 3 out of 3 into Samsara, 2 points into clarity, and then we'll change the action skill element to corrosive. As I mentioned before, I was solely using the hyperfocus for this video, but there are a plethora of guns that would work with this build. I personally like the Lob, Recursion, Unforgiven, Wedding Invite, and the Kibsworth. The real key parts of the gear aren't the guns, but the anointments on my shield and grenade. A Phase Zerker with extra points and anima if possible, and I'm currently using the new DLC artifact, which is just amazing damage. I also tried this build with a bunch of my random artifacts and Phase Zerkers just to make sure the build wasn't being carried by this nearly god-rolled Phase Zerker that I've been using. I can assure you the build still works with worse mods and artifacts, but these are definitely icing on the cake. The rest of the video will just be some gameplay footage of the build in action with timestamps in the description. I realize this isn't a boss melter with the hyper focus, but I wanted to include some realistic gameplay of what you could expect if you're like me and you're just too lazy to be switching builds for mobbing and bossing. I've always loved the mobbing in this game, so that's what this build is focused on, although as you will see, it's more than capable of a 4-player Mallowan takedown and burning bosses. If you would like to see more gameplay of the build or just ask me some questions or hang, come chill at twitch.tv/nugrunonly. Thanks friends, we'll see you next time.
Got one ready for you. Just be.
I got plenty of. Well, you don't.
I'm done here. Freaking legend. Let's go around, huh? Almost done. Feels so good. one! Feels so good! Somebody shoot this one! Feeling good! Silence! Unstoppable! Let's go around, huh? Joy. Waste of my time. Take them out. I am brimming. Takedown! There's nothing I can't beat.
Brilliant work, Vault Hunter. That ass kicking will make Malawan think twice before they come at us again. Now that is definitely your target. Light that giant bastard up.
Not today. Come on, I want the damn challenge. Power. Another takedown. I'm even outpacing my own legend.
Brilliant work, Vault Hunter. That ass kicking will make Maliwan think twice before they come at us.